How can performers and artists overcome imposter syndrome? Welcome to the School of Self-Worth Live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sam Osborne, the Self-Worth Guy. Today's episode number 192, and we are talking about how performers and artists can overcome imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is self-doubt despite evidence of ongoing success. And there's one thing I want performers and artists to remember when it comes to overcoming imposter syndrome, and that is share your story. And I'm going to talk about 3 ways to share your story, or I'm going to talk to you about a formula, step-by-step process for reducing imposter syndrome via this idea of sharing your story. So what kind of story am I talking about? I'm talking about your imposter syndrome story. So talking about your fear and your concern, and what it's like for you as a performer and an artist to go through self-doubt when you go to do whatever it is that you do for a living, being on stage, on screen, in the DJ booth, on stage playing your musical instrument. Maybe you're an actor, maybe you're a dancer, whatever it is. So the first thing I want you to do when it comes to sharing your story is you got to find the right person. You got to find a person who is both a performer and an artist who has experienced imposter syndrome. Now that's hard because you can't just walk up to someone and say, "Excuse me, have you experienced imposter syndrome?" It's not always that easy, right? You have to get to know someone, trust them a little bit, maybe someone you already know, someone in your network, someone you look up to. Go and find that kind of person, and someone you feel that you can be yourself with, and you can admit your weaknesses to. So that's the first step in sharing your imposter syndrome story, is to find someone that you can trust. Okay, that's the first step. The second step in sharing your imposter syndrome story as a performer and an artist is to start the conversation. Now, if finding a person to share your imposter syndrome story is hard, starting the conversation is going to be a little bit more trickier, right? Or it's going to be a challenge. Just go, "Hey, look, can I talk to you about my imposter syndrome story?" And you tell me about yours. That's probably going a little bit too hot, right? So you might want to find someone that you feel is on your level, on your playing field as a performer and an artist, and say, "Listen, I want to ask you some questions about being a performer and an artist, and I want to, really want to ask something that's going to help me to be a better performer and an artist, and hopefully you'll be, you'll be good enough to share your experience." And the simple way to start that conversation is to ask the question, say, "Listen, do you ever go through feelings of self-doubt as a performer or as an artist?" That's a great first question you can ask when you're starting that conversation. It leads into telling your imposter syndrome story. And usually other performers and artists will probably be okay with that. Would say, "Yeah, man, sometimes I go through that when I'm going on stage, when I go to do my thing, when I'm in the studio, I can feel self-conscious." And then you say, "Well, have you experienced imposter syndrome?" And they might say, yeah, I go through that too." You say, "Could I share with you my imposter syndrome story, what it's like for me, and you share yours, and we'll just leave it at that?" And I think that that would be welcomed by other performers and artists, because nobody's really, there's this kind of, I guess, stigma that you shouldn't talk about your weaknesses, especially not self-doubt as a performer or an artist. And so asking someone, can we swap stories, is probably going to open up a great conversation. Okay. And the third step that I want you to do when it comes to sharing your stories, you got to be a little vulnerable. You've actually got to tell the other person what you're going through, your concerns, your feelings, your fears of what you think might happen if someone catches you out as a phony or a fraudulent performer or artist, even though that stuff is never really going to happen and it's mostly in your mind. But having that conversation requires you to be a little bit vulnerable. So let's summarize. If you're a performer and an artist and you're going through imposter syndrome, self-doubt, despite evidence of your ongoing success, Remember to share your story. Go and find someone you trust, open the conversation, and be a little vulnerable. And that is going to reduce imposter syndrome a lot. In fact, the research since 1970 done by, let me get the name here, it is Pauline Clance. She was one of the main people that did a lot of research on imposter syndrome. She found that when she was with a group of students and they all talked about imposter syndrome, it came down. Self-doubt came down when they shared stories. It's like, you go through it too? Me too. So you don't feel alone. And that helps you to build a positive relationship. So you can imagine what that would be like if you find another performer, another artist who's in the same area of you as you, and you can swap that story. It's going to help you to reduce imposter syndrome, to build a positive relationship, and it's going to help you to realize that you're not alone. And it's quite normal as a performer and an artist to go through self-doubt. So remember, share your story. That's going to help you so much. And if you've enjoyed this video, I would like you to accept a free gift from me. It's a self-confidence starter kit, and you can get it at samosborne.com/starter kit. And if you've got questions about imposter syndrome, please put them in the comments below. I'll make a video for you. And if you're a performer and an artist and you're going through imposter syndrome, remember to share your story. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.